All right, so we're diving into a big one today, the meaning of life. No easy answers. But you sent us this really interesting article from stukik.nu all about the search for meaning.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one, and it really highlights how this search for meaning isn't just some philosophical thing. It actually affects us every day, even if we don't realize it.
Totally. It's like the foundation of everything, right? Our jobs, our relationships, even just our hobbies. I think it all comes back to this need to feel like there's a purpose to it all.
Exactly. This article gets at how it's not just about checking off some box oh, I found the meaning of life, but it's really about understanding your place in the grand scheme of things.
So speaking of the grand scheme of things, this article starts us off way back in ancient Greece.
Oh, yeah, good old Socrates and all that self-reflection.
Yeah, but it was Aristotle's idea of eudaimonia that really stood out to me. It's not just about fleeting happiness, but about flourishing as human being, living a life full of purpose and virtue.
I think what's really interesting about that is how do we actually cultivate virtue? It's easy to say live virtuously, but what does that even look like in the real world with all its complexities?
That's a great point. The article doesn't really give us a step-by-step guide to virtue, does it?
No, not really. I mean, maybe that's part of the journey, though, figuring out what those virtues mean to each of us individually.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it probably changes as we grow and learn, too. What we consider virtuous now might evolve as we experience more of life.
Absolutely. Our understanding of virtue can totally shift as we learn more about ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, so from Greece, the article takes us to the East, to Hinduism, and this concept of dharma.
Ah, yes. It's you have this cosmic beauty, a blueprint for a life full of meaning.
And then there's Buddhism, which actually finds meaning in the fact that everything is impermanent.
That's a really interesting one. I mean, if we connect that back to our own lives, maybe it suggests that finding meaning isn't about clinging to things staying the same, but about embracing change and finding purpose within that constant evolution.
Wow, yeah. So instead of fearing change, we can see it as an opportunity to, I don't know, maybe redefine what's meaningful to us.
Exactly.
So big jump now. Let's fast forward to the 20th century. The article talks about how existentialism really shook things up. Suddenly, it wasn't about discovering some preordained meaning. It was about creating it in a universe that might not inherently have any.
Right. It's a bit daunting when you think about it, right?
It is. If the universe doesn't care, then is it all just pointless? That's kind of where Viktor Frankl comes in, right?
Yeah. Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, actually argued that meaning isn't something you find. It's something you create, even when facing unimaginable suffering.
That's incredible. I mean, if anyone had the right to feel like life was meaningless, it would be someone who went through that. But he still found a way to make meaning, even in the darkest of circumstances.
Exactly. And it's such a powerful message for all of us. It means no matter what we're going through, we have the power to choose our attitude and find meaning, even when things are incredibly tough.
So it's not about waiting for meaning to just appear.
Right.
It's about making it happen even when things are difficult.
Precisely. Now, Jean-Paul Sartre had a slightly different take on this. He was all about radical freedom. Since life doesn't come with a set meaning, we have the complete freedom to choose our own purpose.
Okay, but isn't that kind of overwhelming if there's no script? How do you even start to choose when there are infinite possibilities?
Yeah, that's the paradox of freedom, isn't it? It's liberating and terrifying all at once. Sartre believed that this freedom was a huge burden, but also this amazing opportunity to define our existence through the choices we make.
So it's not about finding the right answer. It's about creating your own meaning through your actions and how you choose to live.
Exactly. And then we have Albert Camus, who was fascinated by this concept of the absurd, the clash between our need for meaning and a universe that might not care.
I could see how that would be a bit absurd.
Right. But Camus saw this clash not as a reason to despair, but as a call to action, to embrace life fully, even with all its uncertainty.
So it's okay, maybe there's no cosmic instruction manual, but that doesn't mean we should just give up. We could find a different kind of meaning, one that we create ourselves through our experiences and the things we choose to do.
Exactly.
So bringing it all back, why does all this matter? Why should we even care about these philosophical ideas in the first place?
Well, the article argues that having a sense of purpose can have a huge impact on us, our mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? If you know why you're doing something, it's easier to stay motivated, especially when things get rough.
Absolutely. And studies have shown that people with a strong sense of purpose tend to be more resilient. Like they have a reason to keep going, even when things get hard.
And it's not just about our individual well-being either. The article mentions that this search for meaning often leads us outward, towards like connection, community, contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
It's amazing, right? Like our own need for meaning can actually push us to make the world a better place. By searching for our own purpose, we end up contributing to a greater purpose.
So it's not just about finding meaning for ourselves, but about creating a more meaningful world for everyone.
Exactly.
But let's be real. This isn't always easy. The article acknowledges how scary it can be to face the idea that life might not have a pre-written script for
It
us.
can be a bit much, yeah.
Totally.
Hmm.
Like we're so used to looking for answers outside of ourselves, and then suddenly we're told, nope, you have to create your own. That's a lot of pressure.
It is. And in a world with like so many distractions, it's easy to lose sight of those deeper questions, the ones about what truly matters.
Right. Plus, like, what's considered meaningful can be so different depending on your culture and how you were raised. So you might be dealing with expectations that don't even feel authentic to you.
Absolutely. It's a constant balancing act, trying to figure out what truly gives our lives meaning.
So, okay, where do we go from here? The article ends with some practical advice for, like, how to actually kickstart this whole search for meaning. It starts with reflection. Making time to, I don't know, journal, meditate, really ask yourself those tough questions about what matters most.
It's all about like getting to know yourself on a deeper level, understanding your values, figuring out what makes you, come alive.
Yeah, I like that. And then the article encourages embracing challenges, which I thought was kind of interesting. It ties back to Frankl, right? Like, even in suffering, there's a chance to find meaning. It's like life is going to throw curveballs, but it's how we respond that shapes our sense of purpose.
Exactly. It's about seeing those challenges not as roadblocks, but as opportunities to grow, to learn, to discover more about ourselves.
And then the article also emphasizes connecting with others.
It's so important.
Totally. Like having meaningful conversations, volunteering, joining a community. It's like maybe you find your purpose alongside other people who share your values.
It's true. We don't have to figure it all out on our own.
And then lastly, it encourages exploring spirituality or philosophy. There's a reason those old texts are still relevant today. They wrestle with the big questions that we're still asking ourselves,
Totally. And engaging with those questions, whether it's through reading or, spiritual practices, it can connect us to something bigger, a sense of wonder and awe that goes beyond our everyday worries.
And I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to living authentically, aligning your actions with your values, even when it's tough.
Yeah, when we live in a way that feels true to ourselves, meaning just kind of flows naturally, it's not something we have to force. It becomes a part of who we are.
Okay, so that was a lot, even for a deep dive. Ancient wisdom, existentialism, even some practical tips. What stands out to you from all this?
I think for me, what really hits home is that meaning isn't this elusive thing, Like we don't have to travel to some far off land to find it. It's about making choices in our everyday lives that actually align with what we believe is important.
I like that. And it's about living authentically, like you said,
Yeah.
which can be a challenge in a world that's constantly telling us who to be and what to want.
Exactly. Maybe the real search for meaning is learning to tune out those outside voices and listen to our own inner compass.
It's about trusting ourselves to know what truly matters.
Absolutely.
So, if meaning is something we create, not find, what choices can we make today, right now, that align with what feels most meaningful to us?
That's a great question, and one we should all be asking ourselves, I think.
It's like we can start living more meaningfully today just by making choices that reflect who we are and what we care about.
I love that. It's a simple but powerful idea.
And maybe it's worth revisiting some of those perspectives we talked about. What resonated most with you? The ancient Greeks, the Eastern philosophies, the existentialists.
It's funny. They all kind of speak to me in different ways. Each perspective offers a different piece of the puzzle.
I love that analogy. Like, we're each creating our own unique masterpiece, drawing from all this rich history and thought.
Exactly. And the best part is that this masterpiece is never finished. It's constantly evolving as we grow and change.
So it's an ongoing journey of exploration and discovery.
And that's actually pretty exciting, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it means there's always more to learn, more to experience, and more ways to find meaning in our lives. And I think that's a pretty good place to
take a break.
to take a break. We'll be back soon for part 2 of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
See you soon. Thinking about those different philosophies, it makes you realize, like, how many ways there are for people to find meaning? It's not a one-size-fits-all thing at all.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, for some people, it's all about relationships, right? Being a parent, a partner, a friend. Those connections can be so powerful.
Absolutely, like that feeling of belonging, being loved and needed. And for others, it's their work that gives them that sense of purpose. They love using their talents and skills to make a contribution.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Like, think about an artist who gets lost in their work for hours, or an entrepreneur who builds a business from scratch. It's about expressing themselves
Yeah.
and, like, leaving their mark on the world.
And then there are those who find meaning through spirituality or religion. It can provide comfort and guidance, a way to make sense of those big life questions.
It's like having a framework, a compass, knowing that you're part of something bigger than yourself.
And don't forget nature. Sometimes all it takes is a walk in the woods or looking up at the stars to remind us of, like, just how vast everything is.
Yeah, those moments of awe and wonder can really ground you, right? It puts things into perspective.
Totally. What's interesting is how the article points out that meaning doesn't have to come from these, like, grand external sources. It can be found in everyday moments.
Oh, you mean like just enjoying a cup of coffee? Or laughing with a friend?
Exactly. Think about a time you helped someone, even if it was a small thing, or a time you felt pure joy, like listening to your favorite music. Those moments, as fleeting as they can be so meaningful.
It's about noticing those little sparks of joy and purpose, even when life feels ordinary.
Yeah. It's like we were talking about before, meaning is something we create, not just find. So maybe it's about choosing to see meaning in those everyday moments, even when things feel, I don't know, mundane.
I like that. It's about being present and intentional.
Right. And the article also reminds us that, like, the search for meaning, it's a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process.
So we shouldn't expect to have it all figured out overnight. It's okay to be a work in progress.
Absolutely. It's about staying curious, being open to new things, and constantly asking those big questions. What matters? What do I want to contribute?
And being willing to, like, change course along the way if something's not working.
Right, because what might have been meaningful to us before may change. It's all about being honest with ourselves and making adjustments as we grow.
So it's less about finding this one perfect answer to the meaning of life and more about constantly evolving our understanding of what gives our lives purpose.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. The article gives some practical tips for getting started on this journey. And one that really resonated with me was taking time for reflection.
Oh, yeah, like actually carving out space to be with yourself and ask those tough questions.
Exactly. Journaling, meditating, even just taking a walk in nature. It's all about creating that space for deeper thoughts and feelings to surface.
And the article talked about embracing challenges, too, which, I don't know, I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. It's like we tend to avoid difficult situations, but maybe those challenges can actually help us grow and learn.
It's like facing adversity helps us discover our own strength. It reminds me of what Viktor Frankl was saying about finding meaning in suffering. Like, it's in those moments of struggle that we really learn what we're made of.
So it's not about, like, seeking out suffering, but about seeing those challenges as opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? To learn, to grow, to maybe even find a deeper meaning.
And the article also emphasizes connecting with others, which is so important. Meaning often comes from those relationships, feeling like you're a part of something bigger.
So, like, what are some ways people can cultivate those meaningful connections? What would you suggest?
Well, it could be as simple as having more in-depth conversations with people you care about. Really listening to each other, sharing hopes and fears and dreams. It's about creating space for real connection and vulnerability.
And what about, like, volunteering? Or getting involved in a community, doing something to contribute to something bigger.
Absolutely. That's a great way to find purpose and belonging, using your skills and passions to make a positive impact.
The article also mentioned exploring spirituality or philosophy. I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's about tapping into that sense of wonder and awe, connecting to something larger than ourselves. Reading spiritual texts maybe, or attending religious services, or just taking time for quiet contemplation. It's all about exploring those big questions about life and our place in it all.
And at the end of the day, it all comes back to living authentically, doesn't it? Making choices that align with your values and passions, even when it's hard.
I think that's a key takeaway here. When we live in a way that feels true to ourselves, meaning flows into our lives, it's not something we have to force. It's just like a part of who we are.
Yeah, It's like everything just clicks into place, and you find a sense of peace and fulfillment knowing you're on the right track.
Exactly. That doesn't mean life will be easy or perfect, but you'll face those challenges with a different perspective, knowing that you're living in alignment with what matters to you.
So it's not about finding this one big answer to the meaning of life. It's more about like paying attention to those everyday experiences, finding meaning in the big things and the small things.
It's about those moments of connection, creativity, joy, those moments that make up a life well lived. And it's about accepting that our understanding of meaning will change over time. It's not a static thing.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear, like, what are your own personal thoughts on this whole search for meaning?
Well, I think it's something we all wrestle with in some way, whether we realize it or not. It's that human desire to understand our place, to feel like our lives have purpose.
It's that, like, longing for something more.
Yeah. And I think it's a journey worth taking, even if we don't have all the answers. The process itself can be incredibly rewarding, asking those tough questions, being willing to sit with discomfort, being open to finding meaning in unexpected places.
That's a great perspective. So for our listeners who are on that journey right now, searching for meaning, what advice would you give them?
I'd say be patient with yourself, first of all. It's not a race. Take the time to really get to know yourself and figure out what truly matters to you. And remember that there's no right or wrong answer. What feels meaningful to one person might not to another, and that's okay.
It's about finding your own path, your own sense of purpose.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try new things. Experiment, explore different paths, see what sparks that sense of meaning in your life. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's a new hobby, or maybe it's just spending more time in nature. The possibilities are endless.
So be curious, be open, be patient.
Yes. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all searching in our own way, but we're all connected by this shared desire to find meaning and purpose. And sometimes the most meaningful moments come from connecting with others who are on a similar path.
That's a really beautiful thought. Reach out, share your experiences, support each other. We're all in this together.
Absolutely. And remember, this search isn't about achieving some big final goal. It's about those little moments of purpose and joy along the way. Living authentically, making choices that align with your values, connecting to something bigger than yourself, whether that's relationships or community or spirituality.
It's a good reminder that meaning isn't out there waiting to be found. It's something we cultivate
Yeah,
in ourselves and in the world around us.
exactly. And the more we focus on living a meaningful life, the more meaning we'll find. It's like this beautiful cycle.
That's a great way to put it. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. We've looked at the different ways people find meaning. We've talked about some practical tips for finding more purpose. And we've touched on like the importance of connection, authenticity, and embracing the fact that this is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah. And we've still got more to come. In the final part, we'll explore how the search for meaning can affect what we do, our actions in the real world, and how it can lead to a more fulfilling and purposeful life. We'll also dive deeper into that idea of living authentically and aligning our choices with our values.
So stay tuned. We'll be back soon for the final part of our deep dive. So we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the search for meaning. And, we've talked about a lot of big ideas, but I keep thinking, how does this all actually play out in our lives? Like, it can't just be about thinking about meaning, right? We have to actually live it.
Exactly. It's not just about thinking about it. It's about embodying it. When you have that strong sense of purpose, it really does show up in everything you do, your career, your relationships, even just how you spend your free time.
So, if someone's really passionate about, say, saving the environment, they're probably going to look for a job that lets them make a difference.
Right. Or if you find meaning in being creative, maybe you spend your evenings writing or painting or, I don't know, making music. And these choices, they don't just affect you, they ripple out to the people around you. And they contribute to, a more meaningful society overall.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. It's not just about finding personal fulfillment. It's about realizing that all of our individual searches for meaning, they can actually make a difference.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect.
And the article talks about this idea of living authentically. That's a big part of finding meaning. Making choices that align with your values, even when it's tough.
Even when it means going against the grain, not just doing what you think you should do or chasing after things that don't really matter to you deep down.
It takes a lot of courage to just be yourself, especially when the world is constantly telling you who you should be.
It does. But when you are living authentically, there's this sense of inner peace that you just can't get any other way.
It's like everything clicks into place.
Yeah, and you find yourself on a path that feels right, even if it's not the path everyone else is taking.
So, to kind of wrap things up here, what are some final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that this whole search for meaning, it's a journey, not a destination. We're not going to reach some endpoint and have all the answers figured out. It's about being okay with that process of exploration.
And knowing that what's meaningful to you might change as you grow and change?
Exactly. What felt meaningful to you a few years ago might not feel the same way now. And that's okay. It's actually a good thing. It means you're growing, you're learning, you're evolving.
So don't be afraid to let go of things that aren't working anymore. And be open to new possibilities and new sources of meaning as you move forward.
Yeah, and remember, you're not alone in this. We're all kind of searching together, each on our own path, but connected by this like shared human desire to find meaning and purpose.
That's such a powerful thought. We're all in this together trying to figure it out.
So keep asking those big questions. Keep exploring. Keep connecting with people who share your curiosity. And most importantly, keep being true to yourself. The meaning you're looking for, it's already there inside of you.
I love that. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the search for meaning. And until next time, keep diving deep.